might really do much, but. Okay. So just wait for me just 1 second here while I get the, try to connect to the internet. Already registered, so just go again. Let's check this just in case.
If this doesn't work, we use my hotspot.
Okay.
This worked for me. It just took a minute or two.
Just take a minute or two, okay. So while I'm waiting to get logged in, I don't want you guys to die of absolute boredom. So how many of you have you actually worked with .NET Core so far? That's good. So that's decent amount. How many of you have actually worked with Angular 2? Decent amount, almost the same hands. And how many of you have worked with them together? .NET Core with Angular 2? Even less, okay. I don't care if it's not private. I really don't. So yeah. Yay! First hurdle completed. All right, so let's talk about .NET Core and Angular 2. So one of the things that I really love, if you've ever used Angular 2 at all, or at least what I found frustrating, is you could almost spend days and hours on just the setting up. I mean, it's just the whole trying to get the right config, the right versions, the right, getting everything in a place where you could start working with it is quite, I found to be quite difficult. Although there's a lot of blogs and I suppose you could figure out what someone else has done and you can probably figure it out on your own. But oftentimes, if you try to go in and it's not as simple as Angular 1. In Angular 1, you can just go add a JavaScript file to your library, and then you can start using Angular. It was really easy. With Angular 2, it's pretty invasive in terms of the number of different libraries and components. In fact, with Angular 2, much like for those of you here familiar with .NET Core, so .NET Core componentizes everything. Says, okay, well, we're going to make it so that every tiny little feature that you want, you got to go get a library for. If you want to use static files, you got to go get a library for that. If you want to use a web API, you got to go get a library for it. If you want to use, everything is broken out fairly small. And same thing with Angular. In Angular 2, it's not just you go and get a library and it runs everything. You got to tell it specifically what parts of the library you want to get. So what I've learned is I'm a big fan of going out and getting yeoman projects that have already done the work for me in terms of setting up. They usually come with a little bit of a sample project that you can work with. And for the most part, they've set up Webpack for you, they've set up Angular 2 for you, they've set up the light middleware for you, and so you can kind of just download it, run it, and then change it as you like. So that's what we're going to do. The one that I to work with. So what you do is, so the requirements are you have Node and
You
NPM
want to try to increase the font for the people in the back?
fonts. Yeah, actually, let me do, I wonder if this will be better here. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to create a new folder here called .NET Core Demo Angular 2. Oh yeah, rename, can't start with dot, of course. .NET Core 2. I'll just do that. Okay, so I like to work with Visual Studio Code. So this time will be done in Visual Studio Code. So Visual Studio Code, one of the things I like is you actually have a terminal window in here. Let's see if I can increase the font of that. Perfect. So now you guys can see that, right? So here I'm just going to, so npm install. So the requirements are, is first you have to install Yeoman, which is pretty easy to do. You just do npm install Yeoman, G for, global. And that'll install Yeoman on your machine. After you do that, then you need to install the generator, which is generator ASP.NET Core SPA. Okay? And then after you install the generator, you should be able to do yo ASP.NET Core SPA. And what this will do is it will go ahead and create basically an ASP.NET project. And as you see, it comes with a little guy here, and you can choose. Now, the nice thing is this project comes with a bunch of different things that you can work with. So let's say you're a React project, or you're wanting to learn about Redux. This person has taken the same formatted website and has basically done it, 5 times, and giving you the, if this is how he would do it if he was doing Angular, if he was doing .NET Core and React, or .NET Core and Angular 2. So this presentation will go ahead and go with Angular 2. The second part basically is alluding to what version of the preview you're on. If you're on preview 2, then you'll be on one version. If you're on preview 3, then you'll be on a different version. And for me, I'm on preview 2 because I haven't updated to preview 3, so I'm going to do preview 2. And I'm not going to include any tests for this particular one, but if you want to, you can. And then my project name, I'm just going to do like that. So here, it's going to go ahead and download all the files, create it, do the npm update, install, do the Webpack. You do have to install Webpack globally. You also want to make sure that you have the .NET CLI installed if you're going to do this. And showing take it just a minute, depending on internet speed here. And as you can see on the left here, you can actually see that Visual Studio Code's automatically putting the files in there. And while that is finishing the update, let's go take a look at a couple things. So so one of the things that this project does is it creates it integrates Webpack as a development tool. And so here, if you go to the startup, you look at startup, you can see some basic configuration stuff for any kind of web application. There's MVC, there's a lot. But you have this thing called environment is development. And you have this thing called Webpack middleware. And so what the Webpack middleware is it basically allows you to take advantage of some of the features that Webpack has, more specifically regarding hot module replacement, which is the ability to make changes to your website, and without your browser refreshing, the ability for your browser to automatically pick up that state and refresh your code without a refresh, which is kind of cool. All right, so we're done here. We went ahead and got all the files. One of the first things I'm going to want to do is I'm going to want to do a restore, because it doesn't restore the .NET packages. So I'm going to go ahead and do a restore there to get all the NuGet packages down. And then once that's done, I should be able to do .NET watch run. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with watch is a tooling that's part of the new preview tier that allows you to make changes to your C# code. And when you make changes to your C# code or to your classes, it will automatically recompile and redeploy. And so you really can just make changes, click save. You don't have to worry about building. It'll automatically build for you. If there's an error, it'll give you an error. That's what .NET Watch Run does. And so we're going to go ahead and do that here. Now, it's going to compile. It's going to deliver. So now, if I go to localhost 5000, it's not done yet, actually. Give it a second. There it is. Okay, you can see that it's up and running, and you got a little hello world here. Now, let's go through this application real quick. So, this application has a few examples. There's an example of just basic functionality. I'm going to increment. I'm going to do a counter. We're going to go up one. It also has a fetch data service, and so this is actually hitting the API in .NET, and is actually pulling data and then rendering it here. So you have some very basic components here, but it's enough for you. What I love about it is it's just enough for you to figure out what to do next with it, but not so much that you're confused about what is happening here. Now, other cool things about this is out of the box, you get a universal application. So, who here knows what a universal application is? What's a universal application?
So you can run it in the unified Windows platform, so it can run on any device, basically. Windows device.
Isomorphic.
So it's going to build it on the server, so you get a pre-rendered version of the HTML that's fed, and then it will, in the background, do a switch over to the actual and load Angular.
So with Angular 2 and with React, you get an isomorphic application, which means that a universal application, which, I just said, it means that it will actually run the JavaScript on the server side, and on the initial page load, it'll give you the pre-rendered content. Why would we want to do that?
Increase your, or decrease your page load time, and so then the user, it's got a listener so that the user's interacting with the page. You don't have to wait for Angular to bootstrap, and then you're kind of off and running, and then it just does a handoff between what was sent down the pipe and the app. It's kind of seamlessly.
Yeah, we do that because of page load time, right? We want for the best user experience. There's actually two reasons: page load time and search engine optimization. Because you automatically are delivering an HTML page that is pre-rendered, it's easier for search engines to go through it and render it and see what they want to index on it. The other reason is because of page load time. If you are pre-rendering the content to your cell phone, it's going to be fairly quick. That person's going to get that response in there pretty quick. And then in the background, you're just going to lazy load the JavaScript. And so what this does is it makes it appear that you're really fast, when in fact all you did is you just said, well, the first page we're going to go ahead and pre-render the server, and then your Spot application can run as normal using its regular API calls and whatnot. And they found that by doing that, you get faster, you get the appearance of faster speed. I guess overall you're still downloading, you're probably downloading a little bit more content, but because your first content is so much smaller, that it appears quite a bit. So if you look here, and if we look at our network, so let me just refresh this page here, and let's look at our network here as we refresh fetch data. So if we look here at fetch data, you'll notice that you get one document. Now this would normally make a web service call back to get the data, but because we're pre-rendering it, the data is automatically being inserted to where it needs to be. So it's actually hitting the API on the server side, rendering the HTML page, and then delivering that. Now, so pre-render web is pretty cool. Let's look at hot module replacement. Now, with hot module replacement, one of the things that I need to do is I need to tell this guy here, if you notice, he's checking to see if I'm in development. And in ASP.NET Core, there's actually a setting called ASP.NET Core environment variable, which basically tells you whether or not you're in development. One of the easiest ways to do that, to inject that, is by adding a hosting.json file. And in here, you just put ASP.NET Core. There's actually a lot of ways to do this. There's just one. And we're going to set it to development. And we're going to close this over here. So now, if I do .NET watch run, let's see if it picks up my environment correctly. Yep, you see there? Hosting environment is now development. So great, so now that I'm in development, what will happen here is that this ought to automatically refresh if I change it. So let's test that out, shall we? So let's say that I'm on the counter here. So if I go here to my client app, and I go to my components, and I go to my counter, and I go to this HTML, and I say, awesome counter, because notice I didn't refresh at all. It just automatically applied itself to the page. If I say, hey, I want to increment by 2s instead of by 1s, I could go to the TypeScript here, and I could say, actually, this counter equals this counter, current counter, fact. Plus 2. Well, yeah, we'll do that. No, count. Not count 2. Here we go, save that. So I saved it, not refreshing the page, and now if I increment, it goes by 2s. And that's what hot module replacement is. Actually, as I've been testing it out and using it, I tend to like it. It's not 100% perfect, meaning you can get in a state where perhaps you do need to refresh, but it works pretty well. I like it a lot. So hot module replacement we covered the Webpack middleware. Now let's look at some of the TypeScript here, shall we? So name your 2.
Is it TypeScript by default, or can you choose JavaScript?
In this project, it's TypeScript by default. And it works, and actually, using the TypeScript, it took me a while to come up to speed in terms of the format, but once you get the format, it is very similar to C#, and so you can pick it up quite a bit, but there is I hate to say this because when I go to presentations and they say, yeah, it's like C#, I'm like, it looks nothing like C#. But there are some patterns. You just have to understand the pattern, which we're going to go through here in a moment. Oh wait, when do I need to end this? Midnight?
Before that.
Before that. Because I can go on forever. Just kidding. It's live coding. We can be debugging this thing forever. All right. So here we go. So let's start. So everything it starts with this app module. So the way that the app module TypeScript goes is it's going to be the kind of the thing that connects everything together. This is where I'm going to define all of my different components that I'm using. This is where I'm going to define some special functionality I'm using, like if I'm in the universal mode. I'm also going to define if I'm using a router or if I'm using an ng model. If I wanted to import something else, like a forms module, I can just do this. And I believe that's part of core. And it'll tell me I have an error. And I'll be like, oh, okay, maybe it's a forms module. Maybe it's form module? No, it's forms.
It's not in core.
That's right. Where's it at?
Forms.
Forms.
Forms. Thank you. Why would I be looking at core? That's right. Anyways, so forms module, right? So I import there. Now, so import, very similar to using. Easy to kind of transfer that knowledge base over. Basically, this is the name of the file, or in this case, it's the location of the file. So here, as you can see, so app module TS. So this is saying that in relation to this, that's a period. I'm going to go to components, and I'm going to go to app, and then there's an app component. So if I look here, there is in fact an app component.TypeScript. Now, something to know that isn't necessarily intuitive. You're like, well, it didn't say TypeScript, it just said app component. So TypeScript and JavaScript is kind of inferred. So it doesn't. So as long as it basically this is the same as that, but you just leave out the endings. And so it's actually looking for that file name. It's looking for something with that file name to import into. And then this is relating to what was exported. So if I go back to the components here, and if I go to the app component, you're going to see that the export of this whole thing here is app component. And so that's how it got called. Now, if I wanted to add, since I added the forms component, right? So I'm going to go to forms module here. And now, if I import into my different components the forms module, I can implement that. What is the forms module used for?
Forms API.
Forms API. What useful thing does it really do that you can't do without it?
Data binding.
Can't do data binding unless you have a forms module. That's right. Which is funny that this project didn't include forms module, because it doesn't actually use the two-way data binding. Which you can do one-way data binding just fine. It's the two-way data binding that you have to have the forms module for. Okay, so the declarations are, hey, these are things and actually put this in the wrong place. That's going to throw me an error unless I put it in the right place. That actually goes under the imports. So here, under declarations, are kind of the components that you have. And then under imports are the different libraries. So here you can see the universe module, you see the router module, and you see the forms module. Now, the router module, so routing in Angular 1 was kind of, it's different. We'll just say that. It seems a little more simpler in this form. So in this form, it's basically just, this. So you tell it, hey, what path am I looking for? So this is going to be the root path. And where am I going to redirect to? This one's saying I'm going to redirect to home. Well, if I redirect to home, where's home going to take me? Home is going to take me to the home component, which is already defined here. And if I go to the home component, what am I going to see? So I go to the home component. And sure enough, I see a simple home component, which is, the only thing it's doing is saying, hey, there's a selector called home, which is defining, what kind of component this is, and this is the HTML that's really going to go with me. And if I go to HTML, you can see that, hey, this is the home page. So, if we go back now, you also have this, so you have the forms, the router, so you're basically saying, hey, if they go to /home or /counter or /fetch data, this is where we're going to go afterwards. Pretty straight, simple. Really easy to implement. And that's pretty much it. Now, you'll notice that we have this class here, and you notice that we have this, what they call decorator. So the best way I can explain it, is to say, so the decorators are like, I don't know if you ever use method attributes. It's like that kind of on steroids, because you can do a lot with them. Obviously, you can see here that this whole thing used a decorator. All this information probably could have gone in a class, but they said, no, we want to put it in the decorator. Because we want to be able to say that this is a module, and these are the properties of the module, and so we're going to import this, and that's kind of how they got to work. So you kind of think of these as your class decorators. And that, of course, has to go right on top of the class. And the class syntax is pretty much similar to C#, with the only exception that you're going to add an export tag to it at the very beginning to export it out. So that other things can use it.
And you put nothing in the body of the class, is that correct?
You can. Anybody know what kind of things you would put in the body of a class?
Oh, would be properties and that?
If there was probably some generic properties maybe, or methods you wanted to access, possibly, but I probably wouldn't even use it then. Actually, I'm not sure what I would use the body of the class for. Haven't used it yet.
On ng module,
Yeah.
maybe if you had just shared, things that you wanted shared across your entire application that you wanted to instantiate there.
Yeah, even, I guess if you wanted to instantiate stuff.
Right, so
maybe.
that you don't have to
Yeah.
create, singleton.
Okay, I could probably see that. So if you, for instance, a good example would be if you wanted to capture the user information, and you want to do that immediately when the page loads so that other modules can access that information, then you could instantiate that service here. But, now.
Are these the components, are they the equivalent of controllers in Angular 1?
No, they're not. In Angular, well, depending on your version of Angular, they're more, if you're in Angular 3, they're more closely probably tied to a directive. And if you're in Angular 5, they're more, actually, I think they are called modules in Angular 5. They're called modules, and that's what they're most closely tied to the module in Angular 1.5. So, and
Sorry, stupid question in the back here, but I thought we were talking about Angular 2, and you just mentioned Angular 3 and Angular 5.
1.1.
well, 1.3 and 1.5, sorry.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Because depending on which version of Angular 1 you have, obviously we all know they drastically change the functionality between each of the versions, and some things existed in one and not the other. So, so let's continue on here. So we have that. So let's take a look at the counter TypeScript real quick. Okay, so counter. So a component is basically going to be consisting of a few things. You're going to have a selector, you're going to have a counter, you're probably going to have a template URL or a template. And that's basically just defining, hey, this is the HTML that goes with my component. And then inside of here is going to be your, in any Angular 1, if you're using a controller, then most of that logic would probably appear here. As you can see, it has a little increment counter function here that basically is just increment the counting. And if we look at the HTML that it imported, which is this thing next to it, you can see here, right, awesome counter, you got the current count, and here in Angular 2, this is the one-way data binding. So this is saying that I'm just going to take whatever data is in my components, and I'm going to, whatever property of the data that's my component, I'm going to display it here. And I'm not going to change the data and send it back. I just want it and display it. And with this syntax here, darn it, totally forgot what that's called. Anyone can help me? It's called a specific name.
Handlebars?
Well, they're called handlebars, it's true, but it's called it's basically doing an inline.
Interpolation.
Interpolation, thank you. That was a key word I was looking for. So interpolation. What interpolation is basically saying that, hey, you got this HTML here, but this part inside of the double curly brackets here is going to be actual JavaScript. It's going to be either an expression or a property. In this case, we're actually accessing a property that we want to display whatever's inside that property in here. And so here, if I actually change this to expression, I said, hey, does this equal 0? And I save this. And I go back over here and I go to counter. And, I assigned it 0. I want to do that. Let's do it. I'm running into that. Should have quit packed. That's weird. Here, see? You can see that changed the statement from, the numerical value of the counter to actually being true. And if I actually changed it to incremented, it actually changed it to false. So you can see there that it takes either an expression or you can actually take the actual value or property of the component here. So here, look at here, this is just a public property counter. Now, the other thing that's a little bit funky, so in Angular 1 you have ng-click. In Angular 2 you don't have ng-click. You just have click with a, click surrounded by parentheses. And then inside here you put the method that you want to access. And that's kind of how you do it in Angular 2. A little bit different syntax. Can be a little bit hard to remember sometimes because you just want to use the ng-click, but that's how you do it. And so here, this is using the increment counter, and if you go back to TypeScript, of course, you'll find that there is a public increment counter in TypeScript. Again, very similar to C# in that regard, where you're going to have, you're going to define the scope, you're going to define the method name, and then you're going to write out the function. Any questions so far just on the counter or anything that just seems a little weird or odd? Or?
So on the HTML side,
Yeah.
Is it literally any JavaScript, or is this something where Angular is actually doing some parsing and most JavaScript is supported, but not any JavaScript?
I want to say that it's limited to just expressions and just properties. So I don't think that if I could try an alert, I guess. What was that called again? I think it's just alert.
Just alert?
Yeah. So if I did that, what would happen?
And this is JavaScript, not TypeScript.
And as you can see, it's not doing anything. So yeah. So the interpolation is only for properties and expressions. So you can add you can do a kind of a Boolean comparison or something like that. And you can probably even say that, you can even probably do a coalesce operator where you're saying, well, if this is null, then I want to display this value, otherwise display this. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So if I wanted to do counter, and I wanted to say, hey, if that is, so let's say that is, if it's greater than 4, then I want to display too big. Otherwise, I'm really just kind of going off the top of my head here, because I like to Google everything, which makes me representer perhaps, but hopefully it works. So if I go here, you can see that I could do kind of a coalesce operator to say, and if it's this value, and if it gets bigger than that, then display this value. So, any other questions real quick before I move on?
Yeah.
Yep.
So in HTML, you have the call to increment counter there, which is in one file, and the actual function itself is in another file.
Mhm.
It's just by exporting it that it becomes available? How does, so you have increment counter.
So this decorator here is what's tying the two together. You see this
Okay.
template URL?
Yep.
It's saying I'm looking in the same folder, and I'm looking for counter component.html. And so what happens is when this gets, transpiled to JavaScript, and when it does that, it's basically saying, hey, we're going to go ahead and pull in whatever is in this HTML file, and we're going to display that.
Oh, I see it, and then it's there.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's kind of what's combining the two.
Maybe you could show the generated file.
Sure. One of the other things you can do too, real quick, is you could, let's say that I wanted to just do inline. So I could do template, and I could do here, and take that off. So I could actually put the HTML inside of the component to actually, if this was a small component and I didn't want to create a whole other file, which this is actually a pretty small file. I could literally just put the HTML in there, and you can see that it'll render the same.
Do you have an index.html in there?
The index.html. There isn't, so in this particular model, it's actually using an index.cshtml because it's a .NET Core application. It's using Razor as its home page. And what the Razor is doing for you is, for one, it's enabling the pre-rendering. And then what it's pointing to is it's saying, hey, when you do render, I'm going to look for this vendor.js in this main client. So let's explain that a little bit better there. So what Webpack is doing here is it's going to go ahead and grab all your vendor files, and it's going to put them all into one file called vendor.js. And then it's going to grab all of your Angular 2 files, all of those things that you're actually developing in, and it's going to put them in a file called main.client.js. And so if you actually look here, this is the uncompiled version, the TypeScript, the HTML, CSS. When Webpack actually goes to compile it, it's going to put it in the www root. Your www root for .NET Core is your static file folder, which means this is a folder where my final product of HTML, JavaScript, CSS files are going to be, and the client is actually going to interact with. And so this is everything that gets developed here. So if you look at the main client.js, all that's TypeScript ends up coming out to be generated like this, which is quite a bit. That's including information about the Webpack, and if I look for a counter, you can see there's a counter component. It's automatically creating, there's the routing parts of it. There's the HTML that's being stored in the file, and so you can see here, so all that the index.ch.html, all that main view is doing is saying, hey, we're going to go grab this JavaScript file. And that JavaScript file, when it loads, is automatically going to bootstrap your app, and then it's going to inject all the HTML that needs to render the page. Any other questions before I move on?
Just what was the selector?
What is a selector? Yes. The selector, so, although it has a selector, it wasn't really used here. So in here, the selector is basically defining that if you were to put this in an HTML page, I would use this selector. And let me try it here. So if I wanted my counter to be on the home page, for instance, in theory, and I haven't tried this out, so hopefully it works, I should be able to just do that. And if I do that, the HTML that represents that counter should appear on my home page, which it does. It's great when things work. Awesome.
Is the selector used in the routing? Is that how it works?
So the selector, in this particular instance, isn't used in the routing at all. It's mainly, I think, of just a required component in terms of having a component. I think if I don't have a selector, and I can try it for live coding, why not? If I take out the selector and I just go save this,
It's used to select the HTML element that you're injecting.
it doesn't. Not in this, because I directly told the router that I said, hey, this is my routing, and this is the component.
No, the selector property is necessary because that's how it's trying to inject. It needs to find that element on the page so it can inject that element.
Actually, I took it off and it worked fine.
It worked fine when you routed to it, but what about on the homepage?
The homepage will probably break because it's not longer there.
Yeah.
But so the selector is basically there as a directive. So in directives, you define what your directive name was, so you could use it in HTML code, and you could use components within components within components. And so that's kind of what the selector is there for. In this example, though, as you can see, selector wasn't actually needed because we were directly routing to the components.
The bootstrapped component is going to be rendered by default, which is why home. You don't have to have that home in this particular instance. The rest of as you drill down to the app, all of those selectors, like the gentleman up front said, that's where those come into play. So.
Yeah. right, any other questions before we move on?
I just have
Sure.
just something little here. So in the HTML where you're hard coded too big, could you create a variable in the component that's essentially too big, and you use that variable instead of hard coding? Does that
So,
would you do curly
so here,
braces inside curly braces?
I can do public, you know, count warning equals too big. And, or I'll just say way too big, just so you guys don't think it's cached or anything. Because we're all skeptical. And then here, I should be able to just replace this with the count warning. And now, if I go here, I should be able to say way too big. Okay. Yes?
Which, back where you have the HTML declared in line.
Yeah.
How is that delineated if you wanted to add another key value pair after that?
If I wanted to add another key value pair, what do you mean?
It's just in backticks, so you can put anything you want there.
Yeah, so, and this is important too, I guess. So here, and this is kind of in JavaScript as well, and React and everything, backticks is indicating multi-line text, basically. And so if I add in a letter, like I can do letter H1 here, right? And say, hello, and the core meetup. And I come back here, and it'll disappear. Because it's actually taking this and rendering it as HTML. Anything within the ticks, the backticks, is just considered HTML.
Oh, okay, I didn't see that.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions? Okay, excellent questions.
Maybe you could explain the public.
Public? Oh, yeah, sure. This is just scope. So if I change this to private, then if I go back here, it'll still access it. But if I used it in a, let's see, but it would, okay. So what this would do is it wouldn't give you access to that variable outside. So if I wanted to actually access that particular property outside of this component, I would be able to. I don't think. An example would be if I wanted to, let's say that I wanted to, using two-way data binding, I wanted to actually elevate that up to the parent components and give it that warning. I wouldn't be able to if it was private, but if it was public, I could. So let's just go. Any other questions?
This is a VB6 kind of question, but if I wanted an HTML table that was data bound to an underlying table in SQL Server, how would I do it?
Yeah. So, segueing to the next part. So let's look at fetch data, right? Because that's what fetch data does. Fetch data says I'm going to fetch data out of a backend service, and then I'm going to display it in the front end. So this is a little bit more complicated, but not too bad. So let's go through this real quick. So you have we're going to go ahead and import components, but we're also going to import this other thing called HTTP. Now HTTP is the Angular 2 way of being able to do service calls to a back-end service. And so here, in my component, I'm basically saying, hey, we're going to fetch data. There's my HTML file. Great. In my public, now I'm going to export this class. And then when I export this class, I'm going to get forecasts. And forecasts, and this is kind of interesting here. So this is one of those variants on C#. This is how they're typing it. So they're basically saying this is a public variable called forecast, and it actually has to be this object. It has to be a weather. It has to be a collection of weather forecasts. And as you can see below it here, there's an interface for weather forecasts, identifying that hey, weather forecast has to be date formatted, temperature, temperature F, and summary. And what this does is it says, hey, this guarantees that whatever forecast gets sent to has to abide by this contract. Now, you'll notice it's backwards though. You notice that how in C# you actually do, your scope, and then you define what your data type is, and then you declare your variable. Here, it's just backwards. You're going to declare your scope, you're then going to declare the name of the variable, and then, if you want to, you don't have to, you're going to declare the typing of it, followed by the colon. Now, yeah.
So is that interface, is that basically because that's what it's getting back from the API?
Right.
Okay.
Yep. Now, if we go here to the constructor, now the constructor is how we're doing the dependency injection. So we have an HTTP service. We want to access that HTTP service within this class. I'm going to use a constructor to pull it in. And so basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a variable called HTTP, and then I'm going to say this service of HTTP is going to equal this local variable of HTTP. And because I'm doing it in this constructor, it's going to go ahead and initialize that as a private local variable. And so because I've done this part, if I wanted to, I could access, HTTP outside if I had, okay, so let's say that I wanted to do a add. Let's say I wanted to add to the weather for whatever reason. I could do this .http .post, give it an address, and give it an object. And I could say I want to give it the object of weather forecast. And just say weather forecast. And new weather forecast. Do that. Well, I didn't create an initializer, so that didn't work. I can just say, let's just do get for now, because I don't have an object to put in there.
You just save that. No, you're just passing it in the constructor, you're not storing it.
Capital H.
Yeah, that would be a type.
Wait, what's the type?
So you have an instance called HTTP in the constructor, but you don't save it as a field.
You need to change it to private.
Add private to your constructor.
Oh, this is what I need to do. Sorry. You have to define the scope in here, otherwise it thinks there we go. Sorry.
It's also
This,
capitalized.
so this isn't the variable. This is the variable.
Right.
This is the, so you gotta remember it's backwards. The variable, the object that you are applying to that. And now my error is, do not swipe, because I didn't provide a URL. And so now I can do API, something. And so that's kind of, so this kind of acts as your injection. So if you remember in Angular 1, you had to, if you wanted to use another service, or you wanted to use a different component or directive that you built, or you would, well, not directive, but a different controller or service or a factory, you would have to inject that into your controller or directive. And so here, the injection is as follows. You do the import, and then here you do the injection. And if you're doing a service, you actually, there's actually another one here called service provider, or provider, which is an array if I had a service. But I don't at this point, so we'll go there. But, so now let's look at the HTTP GET call here. So the HTTP GET call is just basically taking a URL address. It's saying, hey, if you hit API sample data, weather forecast, you're going to get back some data. The subscribe, so in Angular 2, they don't use promises, they use observers, which is a little bit different. But they use a subscribe function, which basically says, hey, I'm going to get back a result, and when I get back the result, I'm going to say that my local item here called forecast, we're going to set that to the result.json as weather forecast. It's basically saying, hey, we're going to take that JSON data and we're going to make sure that it adheres to this weather forecast contract that we've created. And once it does that, it will automatically populate forecast. Now, if we look at the HTML components, hey, we have a table. So this table has some headers, we can see that. And it also has an ngF that says, hey, if there's forecasts, we're going to go ahead and display the table. If not, we're going to go ahead and display just some loading text. This ngF is a little bit different. You'll notice it also has a little bit of an extra character in front of it. A bit random, I'm not sure why, but it does. It is what it is. And so this is basically ngF. You don't longer have, so one of the things they did with Angular 2 is they really went to heart as to everything that was duplicated. And they said, well, if there's a similar function, we're not going to duplicate that function. So in Angular 1, you had like ng-show, ng-hide, and you had the ngF. Well, in Angular 2, you just have the ngF. And ngF is what you use in order to show or hide certain elements. And then if you go down here, this is where the loop comes in. So you have an ng4. Again, you'll notice a special character. ng4 is what's doing our loop. That's the same thing as Angular 1, the ng repeat. And this syntax here is a little bit different. This is the syntax for doing a loop. Let forecast, basically declaring your variable as a forecast of forecasts. And this is the array from the function before. And so your ng4 is saying, hey, go to forecast, and for every item in that array, we're going to declare a variable called forecast. And then in your cells, you're going to say forecast.date formatted and forecast.temperature and summary and so forth. And that is doing, again, one-way data binding to the HTML, rendering the page. Now, on the other side, just to fully get it, so remember we're hitting this API sample data weather forecast. So if we look here and we go to our controllers, this reads pretty much just like Web API that we have now in .NET 4.6, or very similar. Slight syntactical differences, but not enough to really make a difference. And again, this controller is just saying, hey, I'm sample data, and I'm going to deliver you some weather forecasts. And it has this nice little function here that's going to go through this array of summaries, and it's going to randomly give you some temperatures with some days and the summaries of those days. It's going to go through each. So actually, it's just really going from -20 to 55. So if we look here at the fetch data, you can see that it just kind of goes from the day, balmy, cold, sweltering, mild, and it's automatically just randomly creating those ranges. And then you can see that it also has its little contract as well here for the weather forecast, which matches. There's the temperature. Return 32 plus temperature C for Fahrenheit. Makes sense. Any questions on how that connection from the Web API to Angular 2 works?
You mentioned no promises. Is there an approach where you need to do QOL?
We need to do what?
Like a $QOL?
A $QOL.
And the promise structure for $Q?
Oh, like when all promises are resolved?
Reactive programming has a different approach to it. So if you look at RxJS, it has all sorts of stuff on how, that's what Angular is using for their observable stuff. So
Okay.
it's a different mindset than because you don't have unlimited promise chains. You can subscribe to events and cancel midstream and do all sorts of things. So
Yeah, it's cool stuff. Any other questions regarding this? Okay, so that kind of goes through, let's see here, is that model there? We covered that. So, let's see here, 709. So there's a few things we can do here at this point. I'll let you guys decide if you, because I know that this can be kind of hard to understand or take sometimes, and it can also be really, sometimes when you're learning .NET Core in a year or two, it can be kind of hard to get them both. I can do an example of, a service and connecting it. In fact, I had planned on doing a randomizer type thing because I always felt like we needed some kind of randomized service whenever we do these meetups, because we are always drawing names out of paper instead of just doing it true randomly the way we should be doing it. So I can go through how to do that. I'm guessing that will take me, and it'll be live coding straight, but it'll probably take me another 40 minutes, which will take us to 7:50 or so, which is why I kind of wondered about the time. So I spent a lot more time going into detail how this was working as is. And I'm happy to go through and explain what I'm doing, but overall, I guess I want to get the consensus of what you guys think.
Two-way data binding.
Yeah, two-way data binding. Any thoughts?
Well, I have one question.
Sure.
The difference between a home page entry point versus an app component entry point. I just wanted to gel or figure out exactly how that worked.
Okay. So the entry points here.
Hey, Dave.
Yeah.
Can you repeat the question? I'm not sure everybody can hear that.
Oh, sure. So the question that was given to me was, what is the difference between the entry point and the app entry point in TypeScript versus the app entry point in the home.index.html? Yeah. Is that okay? So if we look here on the app side. So you got some components here, but one of them. So you got a few things. So you got this boot client and this boot server. So these guys are really just managing kind of the, so boot client is doing some of the feature sets that we're talking about, the hot module replacement. And boot server is doing, I believe it's doing the pre-rendering as well. So you got some just kind of fundamental client stuff, and then you really get the app module.ts. Now what happens is a Webpack will take all your TypeScripts and will read through all the imports, and it will read through all of your properties and your classes, and it is going to export, it's going to transcompile, meaning it's going to convert it's going to convert your TypeScript into JavaScript, and then it's going to combine all your JavaScript together into one big JavaScript file. And that goes to your www root. And so think of this as the compiled, so in TypeScript you basically are having a separation here because you want to take advantage of the compile time, type checking that you get with TypeScript. You do everything in TypeScript, but TypeScript natively doesn't run in browsers. And so in order for it to run, it has to convert it into JavaScript. And so it takes that app.ts and it says, hey, that's my starting point. I'm going to go ahead and convert all that into JavaScript. And if you look at, there's some configuration files here. And unfortunately, this is the part where I'm a little bit less familiar with because I frankly don't care as long as it works. But this is kind of how it works. So you basically are defining what files you want, what TypeScripts you want. You're telling it, what folders you're including in that TypeScript. You're saying, hey, we're going to go ahead and tell it where our bundles are. And this is kind of all the stuff that I really hate dealing with, actually, because you can really spend days on this and feel like you're going to cry sometimes. And you just do. Not that I've done that, but.
I've seen other people.
Yeah, it's totally been somebody else. Yeah.
So I guess what I'm looking for is,
yeah.
I guess another way to ask the question that might be helpful, at least to me, in everyone's concepts of an MVC app where we have an index page and we have an entry point there where the app loads and loads to the DOM, we're used to just throwing in our JavaScript file. if we're just throwing in the JavaScript file, this is clearly a framework to throw in that JavaScript file and get us started.
Yeah, what it's doing is it's giving you some of the, so instead of just giving you, so it is giving you just that JavaScript file, that's right. But but it's also optimizing it as well.
Correct, correct.
Yeah.
So at that point then, where is really, if I were to put a debug statement in Chrome or something,
great.
and see where it really started?
Nice thing is, so you have the map files that it includes, and so in here in debug, you can actually debug in TypeScript. That's a cool feature.
As long as you're deploying them.
If you're deploying the map files, is that what you were saying?
That's your sources. There we go. So yeah, so if I go here, and so it's kind of all the stuff I don't really care about. But one of the things that I can do here is I can say, and you can kind of see, hey, they're serving some from file system, there's a map detected, so I can say more, and it says, hey, the associated files are available via the file tree. Just say Control P. Say Control P, and so if I wanted to go to counter, you can see I can not only debug the JavaScript, but I can actually debug the TypeScript. And so I can say, hey, I want to add a debug point here in my TypeScript. And if I go here and I say increment, it will do. And that, my friend, is how you debug. That totally works most of the time, actually. That was actually the first time it didn't work. That's what I'm missing.
Was it the wrong file, a duplicate or something?
No, that's the right file. You just refresh the page, oddly enough. Maybe that'll fix it. When in doubt, reboot. No, didn't do anything. But yeah, so you are supposed to be able to debug the TypeScript. However, for whatever reason, that one does not want to debug. Oh, it's because I changed it. Maybe. Could have been that. Let's see if I do it now. Ah, there it was. So, lesson learned, which I didn't know before. The webpack, because it's kind of messing with you behind the scenes and giving you your JavaScript. If you do want to debug, you're going to have to refresh the browser for debugging, which is the issue I had. Yeah?
You talked about the TypeScript and then the JavaScript running on the server. That means you do relatively little debugging on the client side. You have to remote into the server, is that right?
Yeah, well, no. So let me rephrase that. So in terms of, so the question was, well, if I'm doing, so if the script is running on the server side, if the JavaScript's running on the server side and the C# code's running on the server side, am I not just debugging on the server side? So on the C# side, then yeah, you're gotta have to debug just like we do now. Any kind of debugging we do, which is mostly logging. However, on the JavaScript side, JavaScript is only running for the pre-rendering of the page. Does that make sense? So like on the fetch data, it did the service call to itself, ironically, and said, hey, I'm going to go grab this API, we're going to grab this data, and we're going to put it in the interpolation, and we're going to automatically deliver this HTML form with all the weather data that we need. It automatically pre-built that page. However, the JavaScript behind that page was still available. So if I added a button or something, any kind of actions or button that's related to that page is still going to be client-side. The client is still going to need to run it and debug it. Yeah.
What about using other packages, other libraries like jQuery?
Okay. So the question is, what about using other packages and libraries like jQuery? That's a good question. I haven't actually used that yet. Has anybody had any experience with that in the room, maybe?
I would use jQuery in your components.
Wouldn't use jQuery in the components?
Yeah, because you're trying to get a DOM level, you're trying to get to the DOM from a component, which makes it really, really tough to unit test. And you don't need to, it's kind of a different way of thinking. If you haven't done a lot of Angular, you need to just work with what's in your kind of TypeScript files. Anyway.
Yeah,
you can use type. That's where the typings come in. So you can import the typings. You can import the typings so that you have all of your code complete and IntelliSense and so on in the IDE. But you have to
Yeah, but
import.
you wouldn't want to manipulate the DOM within your component. You would want to manipulate your model and have Angular represent it on the presentation layer. You wouldn't want to get jQuery in that loop. I'm just giving you a big.
Depending on what you're using jQuery for.
Right, exactly, but you can, and that's why you didn't go into like the typings, so how you can import and use other libraries and so on for it. With TypeScript, then you can get the full IntelliSense and type checking and so on that comes with TypeScript.
Right, I see what you're saying. So the importing here, so the importing the modules here, and really call them modules, but these are really kind of what you're talking about. These are functionalities, these are libraries that were kind of built. These ones are specific to Angular 2, but let's say that I wanted to do, I don't know, let's see, the other common one that has to do with time.
Locale?
No.
Moment?
Moments. So I would probably find a moment TypeScript library, I would import it here, and then I should be able to access, those moment components using the TypeScript library. And really, you just import it here, and then once you import there, then if your component actually uses it, then you can import it at the component level as well. And so here at the top, I could say I'm importing the components, and then in my constructor of the class, if you remember the constructors, you would automatically give it the signature saying, hey, I'm going to go ahead and use component, and this method and component is typed to this guy here. I don't have an example of that right off the top of my head right now, other than what's before me though, for that particular question. Any other questions on this?
Is app module like the top level module, if you will, and there's only one, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, there's only one per SPA. I should say that.
Okay.
So, because you can have multiple SPAs in the application.
Okay.
Any other questions on this so far?
No, the boot client, boot server, those are strictly for what, the dev modes, hot reloading?
Yeah, well, so the server is for the dev client, I believe, is for the hot module replacement. And I believe the boot server is for the Angular Universal stuff, the pre-rendering. So, and actually, if you look at the view for the index.cshtml, you can actually see that, there's my vendor, there's my clients, and then if you look here, ASP pre-rendered module is actually looking at client app dist main server. And so that's where it's getting its instructions as to how to pre-render. Okay. Should I keep going? Should I do something else? Should I stop?
If you're at a good stopping point, I think we're getting to about that.
For a good stopping point, let's do it then.
Okay.
I can always come back another time to bore you guys.
Is that consensus out of the group? Feels good about? Okay, let's wrap it up then.
Okay, great. Well, that was it. But yeah, I would totally use this, ASP.NET Core, SPA. I actually did a few proof of concepts, and this is a great starting point because you have kind of an example of quite a few components that you can work with, and you can really, it saves you a lot of time in terms of configuring, which you don't want to do, but you get all the rich feature sets. So that's my presentation. I did build a randomizer application though, so I believe if you go to cool.azurewebsites.net, let's see if it works. So I actually took this application and I went ahead and built this guy, which hopefully works.
And it's probably free. Just block website.
Should have done cool.s3.
Should have. What was I doing here?
They've already blacklisted it.
That's what happens when I leave it wide open, right? And so if you go to cool.azurewebsites.net, I don't know if we have any prizes. Do we have prizes?
We do.
So why don't we give this a try? So go ahead and go to this page, cool.azurewebsites.net. sign in, put your name and your email, and then just say, sign me up, Scotty.
Did we officially get names earlier or anything, or did we?
I think we,
Might as well
I don't
try
think I
this?
did, I think we might as well try this, yeah.
Right now, there's 2 registrants, one is blank, so there's a good chance for you winning.
So cool.azurewebsite.net?
Yeah.
.net?
Or you can use that if you want to. Cool.azurewebsites.net.
So how does this work? Is it, I mean, so we've got some announcements to do, is this gonna show us who the winners are, or
Yeah.
how does?
So I click here and get winner, and I'll show you right now. But I click here and get winner, and we'll actually randomly select the winner.
Looks like I found you.
If found a blank person, I accidentally put the winner, so don't put a blank person. But yeah, they'll automatically find you the first time, but it's all right.
It's a little suspect. So, can I switch
Yeah,
for a minute?
go ahead.
Okay, are we good to end the live stream then?
I think so.